Hey, this is Matt from Unbearable73. Welcome to this video. This is my thoughts on bands with no original members. So I have an article here. We'll get right into it. I have an article here from ultimateclassicrock.com. It's a decent little music website. And I was reading the article. And I was thinking about the broader context of this category, so to speak. So let me give you some of my thoughts on the broader context, and then we'll go over the article, and I'll have other thoughts on other bands. Okay. So when you think about bands with no original members, I'm broadening that to include bands who replace members, bands who reform under certain circumstances, and there's kind of maybe four categories of this that you would think about. One are bands continue with no original members, okay? And there are different reasons why that happens. But that's basically when all the original members have left the band and other members of the band are continuing, or so to speak. And that could arise through multiple means. Another one is legacy acts. What's a legacy act? Well, a legacy act would be something like, let's say, Glass Knight and the Pips, who kind of ended their career, so to speak. I think in the 90s, they all aged out and largely retired. Well, if you watch PBS over the years, you'll see periodic performances where replacements come in for the Pips, so to speak. And that's kind of what a legacy act is, when an old band gets back together for a special show. You might, I think Black Sabbath did that originally, and then they wound up touring, making albums again. You know, Queen is basically a legacy act at this point, although I put them in another category on this one. But if you watch PBS specials, there are a lot of PBS special legacy acts, like all the 50s and 60s. What you used to call the doo-wop or the Motown rock groups. They continue performing, sometimes with replacement members, because obviously they're very old or passed away. But some of the guys can still sing and do their moves, and you hear those classic hits they put out. I don't have a real problem with that. Then there's bands that replace one significant replacement, and the last category is bands that continue by family members. So what are my thoughts on these sort of groupings, right? Well, the first one with no original members, there's basically one circumstance where I'm okay with this, okay? If the band formed, let's say like in 1960, right? And over the course of 1950 to now, over time, people keep coming in and out of the band. And eventually all the original members are gone, but you still have the band with continuity flowing through. I'm okay with that, as long as the band is continuing to be the band, and they could create new music or just do the old hits or whatever. There are a lot of acts like that. In this article, they reference a few of them. I'm not saying I always go and listen to them once they become these sort of band and original members. But there are a few over the years that I followed, which I'll mention you'll see in the article. The third group, bands that continue with one significant replacement. The most notable example here is going to be Queen. Queen is a legendary rock band, progressive rock band, with one of the greatest male vocalists of all time, Freddie Mercury. I mean, the tier of vocalists in my lifetime, of male vocalists, let's say, Luciano Pavarotti is number one. There's no one even comparable to him, like on his tier, right? Then below him, you have all sorts of different categories of singer and whatnot. So you could say, well, one opera singer might be good as one rock singer and so forth. And like I said, but you could legitimately compare and contrast guys, right? Freddie is right along with Burton C. Bell in his prime, with a couple of major opera singers like the Spanish guy. I can't remember his name right now. Carreras? No, Placido Domingo. I think it's Placido Domingo. Meatloaf, another example, or Michael Jackson, for example. All that sort of. There's a lot of male singers, for example, in the second tier of male singers, who you can compare from different genres. These guys just have great voices and did a lot with it. You have the greatest voice in the universe, but you don't do anything with it, significant. You can't be considered to be on the list of greatest or best performers or whatever, and Freddie Mercury is in that number 2 area, okay? The only clearly better than Freddie Mercury, better than anyone else I've ever heard, is Luciano Pavarotti. Now, and so Queen, this is people understand. There are very few bands like Queen in history. This is why I'm of two minds on Queen continuing with the replacement that they have for him, whose name escapes me at the moment, because I'm not, I don't, something about it, I don't know, it makes me not, I've listened to songs by him, and I'd rather listen to Freddie sing the originals, you know. On the other hand, if they actually do new music, which I don't know, then I might listen to the new singer, and that gets me to other bands on this list. But let's finish with Queen. Queen, unlike many other bands, I mean, the rare exception, Queen, Metallica, Iron Maiden, a couple other bands that you could mention, Alice in Chains, for example. They're all great musicians, and it's very rare to get like usually you're going to be one or two great musicians and one or two guys that are good. I mean, the Beatles. The Beatles are all great songwriters, but I'll be honest, McCartney's the only great musician on there, and none of them are great singers. I know this will be controversial. A lot of Beatles songs I like, especially when they cover other bands, because more talented musicians perform them. But the songwriting of the Beatles is great. Okay, no doubt. There's no doubt about that. Bruce Springsteen, Bruce Springsteen's a great songwriter. He's pretty bland to me vocally. You know, I was a really good guitarist, so I'll give him credit for that. And he's a real musical historian and all that. So the point I'm getting at is Queen. The reason I'm acceptable with some bands continuing with replacing that one unique member is if the rest of the band is capable of contributing musically to the experience, and the new member comes in and replaces the singer, or say guitarist or whatever. It's still the band with a slightly different take on it, and you get something new out of it. Like I'm not a fan with Queen or Alice in Chains or another band, Journey, for example. If they just continue to sing the old hits or whatever with the new guy, I'm gonna go listen to the old stuff. But Journey and Alice in Chains have continued on to make new material. I have to double check on Queen. You know, let's do that live. Let's just see if Queen made any new material with Adam something. Let's see, Queen is a British rock bubble. Okay, yeah. So the Queen and the Adam Lambert, Queen plus Adam Lambert. Okay, so let's see. Have they done any albums with Adam Lambert? I'm gonna go to their discography. If they have, I want to go listen to those and probably do a review because I just been very. There have been no Queen albums with unique material made with Adam Lambert. In which case, to me, that makes them Queen moving into more of the legacy act, and then at that point, yeah, I'll listen to Queen Adam Lambert, but I want to go back to Freddie more than anything. So this category where they replace a significant member, it's hit or miss and depends what they do with it. Whereas Alice in Chains, initially I was a little worried the first album when just Jerry was singing. I think it was the first two albums post, I remember. Something about Alice in Chains sound requires that dual, almost triple vocal with, I think, Jerry, Lane, and Mike in the background kind of singing some lyrics. And it wasn't there immediately post Lane's passing with the Alice in Chains albums that came out. But with the newer the last couple albums, even though not the lead, even though the most, there's only one song that really comes to mind with the newer album, Alice in Chains, they have the vocal style back, and I'm really happy about that. You know? And Journey has actually made new albums. I mean, I've only listened to like one of the new albums since then. I'm not a gigantic Journey fan, but and this new singer, to be honest, they've got this is the third new singer. He's as or more talented than the previous two. He just only sings Journey style, and he loves the Journey music. So this kind of category, it depends on what they do with it. And the last one are bands continued by family members. The most significant two you would have heard of is Leonard Skinner and the Mamas and the Papas. So in this category, I'm kind of okay with it. It's just you got to be careful with it. Like the new Mamas and Papas was continued by I think it was Phillips. I know his daughter was in the band for a while. They had almost 20 years of music. They had some original music. They did the old music, and they were good to listen to. You know, and it was a good continuation. Leonard Skinner, his brother, who sounds and looks just like Ronnie, Michael Van Gent is his brother. I'm perfectly fine with that. Let's see if they did any new music. I'd have to know that because I wasn't a big enough Skinner fan. I like a lot of their songs, but I'm not. I would love to have seen them in concert. Obviously, that's not gonna happen. By the time I would have capable of seeing them in concert, Ronnie had passed, and then Michael became the singer years later. So let's just see Leonard. I know I'm spelling this wrong, but you Google, DuckDuckGo or Google, whatever will help us out. So go here, Leonard Skinner, and return. So the return, member changes, deaths, farewell tour. So they had done original albums. Since the replacement members took over, and it looks like more deaths have had, and they've done their retirement tour. So I'm okay. Again, I'm okay with Leonard Skinner being a sort of family act continuing. And if 30 years down the line, their kids all want to get together and do Leonard Skinner and make some new Leonard Skinner music, I'd be okay with that too. Because musical traditions in families is that's tradition of humanity. If you go back and look in history, you'll find multiple generations of musicians running in families, and that's something that's good to continue. One of the most significant ones you might have heard of are Woody and Arlo Guthrie, father and son, who were both great musicians, and one of Arlo's kids is also a great musician. I can't remember his name because there's so much experience in life. I have a good memory, can't remember everything. So let's get on to the article that inspired this and talk about them. And then you've heard some of my thoughts about continuing bands that continue with no members. I have a few more bands and such at the end we'll talk about. So let's get the article back up on screen for you guys. Well, for me, because you guys can see it already. Here we go. So this is from, as I mentioned, Ultimate Classic Rock, and they discuss a couple acts. Yes, my aunt loves this band. I never personally got into them a lot. They have, like any all-time great act, they have a couple of songs I like and all that. But they have no. They sound the same. I've heard the original Yes act with my aunt all the time, and then recently I've heard this reformed Yes with no original members, and to me they sound the same. But my aunt will tell you differently. Blackfoot. Again. I know the original sound. I grew up with my strongest musical influences to me are my aunt and my mother and my cousin Marianne. They spent my aunt and Michelle. Actually, let me put it this way: my strongest cultural influences to me, which include music, would be my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, my aunt Michelle, who's my mother's sister, my mother, my cousin Mary and my cousin Marianne and all, and the three women who really kind of kept me sane as a child. What was going on for were my aunt Michelle, my grandmother, and my cousin Marianne. Who my mother was working and getting our stuff together and all, and they were the ones who really spent a lot of time with me, keeping me sane as a child with all this other stuff that was going on. So what does that mean to me? Well, my mother and my aunt were hippies. And my cousin Marianne, a little older, she was more of a child of the 50s sound. So all those sort of sounds of music are in my head from listening to stuff with them. And obviously my grandparents, all that classic stuff from Bing Crosby and all that. So this particular era of Southern rock in the late 60s, early 70s was one of the things that really bled into me. Leonard Skinner is the most well-known example, but Alabama, Charlie Daniels. Some will say Charlie Daniels is a pure country, but he does country songs and Southern rock songs. But he's really more. If you listen to his music, he's really more of a Southern rock artist. I remember Blackfoot, but they never really jumped out in my head, and now, so I can't comment on them now. Let's go to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Same thing. I dimly remember this band from my listen to with my mother and my aunt and all. Couldn't tell you much difference. So Thin Lizzy. Any legitimate metal fan knows Thin Lizzy. Okay, they're one of Metallica's biggest influences. They're a great band, and Thin Lizzy. If you haven't heard of Thin Lizzy, you need to go listen to them. So the Reformed Act seems to have been a case where Thin Lizzy is a case where the band basically all the original members left or died, and all the current members joined over time. So there's nothing wrong with that, and they sound the same back then. Obviously, it aged a bit. Obviously, all their classic hits are from back in the day, but if you could go to the Lizzy concert now, if they're still touring, go for it. You know, Heart. I did a video on Heart. Heart is a very good band who had a couple of great hits and some two really talented performers, Ann and Nancy Wilson, who do better together than they do separate. And what the annoying thing about Heart, and they shouldn't be on this list, is now both Wilson sisters, who don't understand their success is together and couldn't work things out over, and decide to make their own versions of Heart and tour separately. And that's just going to dilute the product, and I'm not happy about that. The Hollies, again, I remember them from the 60s because they were in that same sort of British invasion type of sound. Remember them from my aunt and all. I couldn't comment too much about them. Gwar. Gwar is a very weird case. Gwar, if you love Gwar, you're really into their music, and if you don't get them. And this Gwar isn't just a band; it's a musical act. So having people replace people in Gwar totally fits it. And to be honest, they sound similar. So I'm not a gigantic Gwar fan where I can go in and tell you every single song they've ever done, but I've seen some of their shows and they're entertaining. But Gwar aren't just musicians. You're getting a whole show, just like with Kiss or Meatloaf. You're getting like a musical opera more than you are just a bunch of songs that person is playing. Yeah. Canned Heat. This is one of my favorite bands from out of the psychedelic funk type of music, and I will go periodically go back and listen to this is one of the bands excuse me, that I can listen to for like 3 or 4 hours straight. I can just play all their old music in my I have CDs ripped. I've ripped all their CDs I owned years ago. My aunt owns some of them. I own some of them. I have copies of them, obviously, but I could, how do I put it? I could play them or Opeth or Metallica or Alice in Chains or Blister Cult. There's maybe 10 or 12 bands or acts, Nightwish or in there that I could listen to just for hours on end. Because their music, when I want to hear it, just bloody resonates. And Canned Heat's one of them. They have this psychedelic funk sound. They're really great at it. And now, this looks like band members who joined in original time have either reformed or continued it. I haven't heard them in modern times, but I don't know. I have to see if they sound the same. Renaissance, they sound they're like the Yardbirds shoot off. I remember the Yardbirds. I mean, this is like Yardbirds side project. Side projects don't count as real bands to me unless the music is different. Unless the music is different from what it came before. Rat. Rat is one of the better what you call hair metal bands. That hair metal. we really should do. I should do a video on it because there are a lot of good bands in there that just got a bad rep because of some of the bands in the hair metal area just plain sucked, and they all got and the image of them all, the glam rock era, it all dragged them down. But there's a bunch of good bands in there that I'm glad that they've kept it together to some extent. I'm not happy about no original members though, but and then Little River Band. Dimly recall these guys. That I don't know if they're big enough to be someone to consider. Quiet Riot. This is a band. I loved them when I was young. They have a really cool sound. Obviously they're even older than from Brandy Rhodes, one of the founders. So I grew up with them in the 80s. After Randy died, obviously, and I've heard them perform in Reunion. And they kind of sound the same, but the lead singer was different. So, but their type of their talent was in playing their music, was in playing some really good songs, but not so much in their individual talents and musicians. And so, I'm okay with them. I enjoyed their reunion, so to speak. A humble pie. My aunt. Well, this is what my aunt uh, will go on about. The original lineup was pretty good. Um, she loves this band. I mean, the original lineup pretty good. I mean, look at the people: Steve Marriott, Jerry Shirley, Griffith, Peter Frampton. You know, I mean, and David Clemson. I mean, you that's they're one of the bands in the original lineup, which you consider in that one of the best group of musicians to ever get together in a band. You know, and now one of the original guys is managing it, but it's a band in name only, and it's just really, I don't know. I've heard them modern times, and they don't sound like the original to me. You know? So that's their article, and it's a good list, but they could have come up with some better examples of that. So let's kill this off. So you don't have to see that. So returning to the broader category of should a band end when one member leaves? No, because now I'm of the opinion that if I were in a band, had musical talent, and were in a band, and one significant guy left, I might make a new band out instead of like if the original band was popular. In other words, I might say, okay, let's just make a new band and with a new name and with a new singer or guitarist or whatever. That might be my take on it. But a band's a business, and the other guy might say, no, we can still do this. We'll still together. And you'd have to listen to, if you're being legitimate, if you're participating in a group of anything, and this goes back to the Wilsons, okay? When you're in something that's big together, you need to consider the fact that it's greater than the sum of its parts. And when you split that up, you have to say, can we legitimately continue this? So, another example, Fear Factory. I think Dino was the only original Fear Factory member left. I'm going to take a swig of Pepsi here. If you want to sponsor me out there, Pepsi Cola, I'll sponsor you Diet Pepsi. Burton C. Bell did the latest album, and then went off to be a head case again. And now Dino, the Fear Factory is supposedly set on a new singer. There's an article about that out there, and I will do an article on that because Fear Factory is a band I really enjoy. And when we hear the new singer is, we'll see if this is someone we know or not. I would love to hear Fear Factory with Howard Jones, who's an amazing vocalist. Howard Jones, like if I were like really big band and I need a male vocalist to fill roles to become a performer in my band, I'd want Howard Jones. Like if I lost my great singer like Burton C. Bell, or if I were Nightwish from Marco left and you want a male vocalist to replace, I'd go say, hey Howard, come tour with us, join our band for a couple of years. Marco is a great singer, and I wish he'd be back in Nightwish. And none of the Nightwish songs that Marco co-sings with Floor, like Ever Dream, sound the same without him because it's a different thing. I get that. But you can get a great male vocalist to sort of do a different take on it, And my point, back to the point of like Fear Factory, is how much can a band fall apart and still be the band? Well, Fear Factory albums have as long as Burton and Dino, one of them seemed to be on it because there are times where there are some albums when only one of the two is on it, have seemed to have maintained a consistent sound, and I'm okay with that. So if that means that Dino should be able to put together a good band here with a vocalist and give us a good album. So obviously it's kind of rambling video. This is my thoughts on bands with no original members. So are there any other bands like this? Well, Metallica has changed their bassist multiple times. It's funny that Trujillo now has been in the band longer than all the previous bass players combined. And there's no replacing Cliff Burton. There's no replacing a guy like Cliff Burton. He's such a. I'm going to link below to a performance if I could find it on YouTube. I can't play the video because I'll get copyrighted. But on S&M 2, there's a cover of Anesthesia by a classical musician that is truly great. It was a tribute to Cliff Burton. Cliff Burton is you know, I have another video to do. I just got inspired. But you know, so I don't know, I'm rambling now, obviously. So, what are your thoughts on this sort of topic? Any other bands who should have continued, well, despite the change, or what about bands who shouldn't have continued? You know, post death or post leaving, or members leaving. If you have any, share them below, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video on your thoughts on that matter. You know. Anyway, this has been Matt from Unbearable73. I'm gonna stop the ramble here. Hopefully you'll follow my ramble for this whole video. If you like it, give me a like. If you don't, give me a dislike. Subscribe if you want to hear more of my content. And have a nice day, and I am out of here.